Today we're going to be talking about Notre Dame. Notre Dame, of course, in Paris. And I have very close affiliations with this beautiful monument that dates back to the 1100s there. But I want to, the reason why I did this talk a few years ago is because there was a great tragedy. A fire broke out in this cathedral, and at the time, I was at the edge of my seat. I was panicked because I felt like an old friend was in trouble. So I want to show you what was happening. Let's go to the first picture. You see, what happened is that on April 15th, 2019, those living in Paris suddenly saw a fire blazing out of the roof of Notre Dame. It was not as if no one had noticed that something was wrong. For around 1820, uh, the fire alarm sounded, with the guards quickly evacuating the structure. But they did not see anything. In fact, one of the guards returned to a space directly beneath the roof, but did not find any sign of the fire. Then, at exactly 1843, the alarm sounded again. And so this time, two guards checked to see what was going on. What they encountered was this wall of flames. Unfortunately, the fire alarm was designed only to inform those on duty about a fire, but it didn't go directly to the fire department. And so the call only occurred around 1851. The firefighters, fortunately, arrived at the 800-year-old cathedral about 10 minutes later. That's pretty quick. And eventually, 400 firefighters arrived at the scene. By this point, white smoke was rising from the roof, but soon the smoke turned black, and the fire appeared from the spire. An hour later, the roof was totally engulfed by flames. You can see here, of course, what you're looking at is scaffolding. They were refurbishing and restoring much of the roof. And so, unfortunately, this was a lattice work that greatly encouraged this fire to get worse, the best way to put it. Let's go to the next picture. The black spire was also uh, in flames, and eventually it was destroyed. The police moved everyone off the area around the area, and so firemen could focus on their jobs, and also in case the fire spread to other structures. Of course, they didn't dare to do any the airdrops because, well, airdrops of water would greatly hurt the integrity of this roof. It's too old, so they didn't do that. So unfortunately, the flames were now starting to approach the towers. Let's go to the next image. Sadly, of course, most of the wooden ceiling, the roof was gone. It was destroyed. The interior was saved by vaulted ceiling that was made of stone, and of course it's to the credit of the fire department that they took out the fire as quick as they did. I was worried personally because I saw those flames licking up and getting really close to the two towers at the facade area. I was worried that that's going to happen. But most of the wooden roof of Notre Dame was destroyed, along with the upper sections of the walls. Um, as far as the artwork is concerned, I want you to take a look at this picture. And you can see here, you can see the kind of those worms that you see there. Well, that's part of the scaffolding, the tubing that came collapsing down, melted. But look at that. It just missed these beautiful images. Just missed it. So close. Let's look at this next image. So, but you can see above, obviously open to the sky. Very disheartening. This, of course, was an accident. It was not intentional. Um, let's look at me for a few moments. But it was heart-wrenching for me. I love history. I love ancient, I love medieval history, I love architecture, I love old buildings, and I love this building. And so it came about that what's going to happen to it, right? So President by the name of Macron, right? He mandated that we're going to fix this grand cathedral in 5 years. At least that was the game plan. He was also open to the idea of doing some innovations, contemporaneous innovations when it comes to architecture, which of course sparked controversy amongst many of those with more traditional views that it should be, of course, rebuilt exactly the way it was. For some, you know, people like me, it was a piece of history. But for others, they saw this as a reflection of many different ages, as a combination of them, in fact. And so, why not add more to the architectural conversation, so to speak? Why not update it, improve it, change it? You know, religion should be always in a state of transformation. And let's let Notre Dame reflect those changes. And so, what happened is a competition ensued. They opened it up to different interpretations. Some said maybe the roof itself should be made out of stained glass. Others said, well, which would have been pretty, but others maintained, why don't we just tear out the ceiling altogether and have it open to the sky? Well, okay. Others suggested making it into an enormous greenhouse. Or at least have a garden as part of the plan, right? But when they did various polls, the majority of people, well, not majority, around 55%, said, let's go back to the original structure. Let's go back to the original church. And so on July 29th of 2019, the French National Assembly, they got together and they made a law that this restoration must preserve the historical, artistic, and architectural interest of this monument. And that became the mandate. Yet in December of 2019, something else happened. Uh, they inspected Notre Dame, and after all of that, many said it's like a 50-50 chance that they can restore it. And the integrity of the vaults are in question, and maybe it will still have to come down. And so people panicked, right? All this melted metal tubes everywhere from the scaffolding had made this pretty dangerous to do any kind of restoration work whatsoever. They would come crashing down, hit a vault, that come crashing down. It was a mess. But slowly but surely, they removed the scaffolding, what was left of it. And then they had another problem. Yeah, it's a massive wood roof, massive, made out of these great oak trees that grew back in the 12th century, and a lot of people said, is there enough oak trees of quality for us in thickness to be able to replace this roof? Can we afford it? Fortunately, by 2021, oak trees enough were found to replace the old ones. By the way, they found a lead sarcophagus about 65 feet below the transept that came from the 12th century. It's kind of interesting. As of right now, when it comes to restoration, it's about 90% complete. There's still much to go. And the plan is, and this is kind of why we are here, is while Notre Dame is closed right now, it's going to open hopefully on December 8th of 2024. So there's a couple more months to go, and this beautiful place will open up. once again, right? So let me share a few things. Let's go to the next image. Can I keep talking about Notre Dame? If you see the restoration going on here, you can see where they think, hey, maybe have this open as a greenhouse, right? Let's go to the next image. So you can see they're working on this. Let's go to the next image. Yeah. Okay. So this is how I first saw Notre Dame. This picture was taken by my mom in 1979. And this is the Notre Dame that I knew. And obviously, it's kind of yellowing. This is an old picture. Let's go to the next image. 1979. It was, of course, April, spring of the year. That's me next to a gargoyle on the right hand side. That's my brother John. We had an interesting episode when we went here that year. Let's go to the next image. The interesting episode is that we were going up the spiral uh, staircase to see the flying buttresses because I really wanted to see them. That's me on the right there. And there had been an emergency. Somebody on the upper levels up there on the balcony, a lady fell faint. And so what happened is the police were storming up the stairs to react to this person, this tourist that fainted. And what the police did is actually pushed me against the edge of the staircase, and to the point where I was kind of in danger. I was kind of hanging off to the side there, and my dad pushed back to defend me. So my dad and this police officer got into a shouting match. And meanwhile, of course, they got the patient and so forth. And was when everything was resolved, the police officer realized that you don't push little kids on staircases, and a father is going to protect their kid no matter what. So he apologized, but what he also did is that I'm going to show you something. And so what he did is he asked for the key, and he got us into the bell tower, and we got a chance to see Emmanuel. We got to see the big bell, and he got a coin, and he very gently uh, hit that large bell with the edge of his coin, and the whole thing started to ring just by barely touching it with a coin. So obviously, Also, the other thing about I'm small. Also, I realized there was no that the balcony area, the stone balcony, the balustrade was very open, and I could easily fall through to my death. So hey, I'm 12, but there you have it. So then next picture, yeah. But I return again. So I'm back. So I return again. This is 1983. And now I am 16 years old. This is October, so we're in the fall of the year in 1983. Once again, I'm returning to take a look at these. I just love gargoyles. Next image. So I'm trying to show you what this place means to me. There's me and my dad sitting there with with the gargoyles, these apotropaic features that ward off evil by being evil themselves in a sense. I mean, look at their images, right? Let's go to the next image. And of course, this is the way it looks another time. They're always doing restoration. Have you noticed this? Let's go to the next image. Actually, that picture, that's me later on. We did get a picture of me in front, which is too bad, but that picture was from 1991. And I had a chance to go to Notre Dame on two different occasions. Went to Paris, then went to Turkey, and then came back to Paris. So I saw it twice. Next image. Yeah, it was a move for me there. There we go. And the return in 1999, and they're doing restoration again. You see, there's a reason for this. Yes, once again, they're working on the facade. Have you noticed, like, on two different occasions, they're working on this. They're constantly keeping this up. This is for, of course, the Jubilee that was coming in 2000. So this is 1999. Let's go to the next image. This is just a picture of me in front, grinning, that I'm happy that I'm there. And once again, we neglected to take a picture of me directly in front, but oh well. Next image. And of course, once again, I took this picture. Love the interior. Next one. And this is me again. This is 2005. This is around of March or February. I've seen Notre Dame in all the seasons. I've seen it, in the winter. I've seen it in the spring. I've seen it in the summer, and I've seen it in the fall. So I mean, hey, I love this place. Let's go to the next image. I'm trying to make a point here, and I think I'm making it pretty well. I'm grinning there before the facade. Right. Next image. Oops, I didn't mean to have two. That was an accident. Next image. So let's go back. So let's go back to the story. So you kind of see how closely aligned I am to this particular place. Now you believe me. So go back. This is actually an image from Asterix, which is one of my favorite comics from the past. So going back, let's go back to kind of the origins of the cathedral, but way back when, the Gallo-Roman era. The city of Paris was known as Lutetia, and a tribe known as the Parisii, hence Paris, lived along the Seine River, and they're the ones who built this particular city. The original location of the Gallic city of Lutetia, by the way, is currently in the Nanterre suburbs of Paris. They discovered between 1994 to 2005, they discovered these graves of warriors and other types. So at some point, the Parsi moved to the site of their city along the left bank of the Seine, and upon the island in the middle of the river that will become known as the Ile de la Cité. And so there it is. Let's go to the next image. And so you get an idea of Roman Lutetia, or Paris, right here. The Romans, when they took over the location, they reorganized the town on their, basically using their customary grid iron map. And so you can see today the Latin Quarter literally was the Latin Quarter of the Romans. Look at that great, those straight roads going back and forth. And you see with the Temple of Jupiter up there. The Temple of Jupiter is where Notre Dame is located today, right? And we have some interesting bits and pieces here. I want you also to notice that we have the various bath complexes. You got the Cluny baths. We'll be seeing them in a little bit. Okay, so let's go to the next image. One interesting little cipher into the beliefs of that time was called, is basically the Pillar of the Boatman, which was discovered in 1710. Provides evidence that a temple did stand in this place where Notre Dame is, as dedicated to the god Jupiter. There was an inscription that was written in Latin. Let's go to the next image. That has some Gaulish words on it, and it's from the reign of Tiberius. It was established by a guild of sailors from Lutetia. It was dedicated to Jupiter in the form of Jovis Optimus or Maximus, which is basically Jupiter best and greatest. There's further dedications are addressed to other gods. For example, Tarvus, Trigonus, Vulcanus, which is Vulcan, Isis, Cernunnos, Castor, Spiritrios, and Fortuna. Let's go to the next image. Of course, here is Tarvus, Trigonus. This is represented as a heavy-set bull directly positioned before a willow tree, right? There's 3 cranes, 2 on his back and 1 upon his head to accompany him. The next image. This is Isus. He's shown here as cutting a tree with an axe. He's often identified with Mars, at least according to Lucan's commentary. And so, according to a 10th century work The Commenta Bernicia refers to the Druidic practice of human sacrifice to Isus, which was typically tying the victim to a tree and then flailing them. So the 4th to 5th century Gallic medical writer by the name of Marcellus Empiricus. What a great name, Empiricus. And he's a medical writer, right? Anyway, refers to Isus being used in various magical remedies that was believed to cure the throat. So I guess some life-giving there. Let's go to the next one. And then, of course, you have, that's right, Cernunnos. Cernunnos is the horned god of Celtic polytheism, often depicted with the curved antlers of a stag. With this depiction having 2 torques hanging from his horns. Take a look at those, right? He is, of course, connected with commerce, associated with material wealth. Of course, we also have other bits and pieces. In fact, there's one. We'll just keep going. Now the lower part is missing, but we can compare other images of him and kind of get a bigger idea. For example, the famous Gundestrup cauldron. Let's take a look at this, and you get an idea what the next image. Get an idea. That's kind of what it looks like. So there you have it. But who is the Cernunnos? And so the question is, there's lots of controversy. Its root is Cern, and this root is within a name of a person by the name of Cornal Carnach. Cornal Carnach is the foster brother of the Irish hero by the name of Cuchulainn in the Ulster cycle. And so maybe there's a connection with this hero. In fact, let's go to the next image. There is an 8th century story entitled The Cattle Raid on Fraiche. In this passage, Conall Carnach is portrayed as a hero and a mighty warrior who assists the protagonist by the name of Fraiche in rescuing his wife and son and reclaiming for Fraiche his cattle. Now, the fort that Conall must penetrate is guarded by a mighty serpent. But then at the end of this tale is very strange, because what happens is the fearsome serpent that he's supposed to fight, instead of attacking Conall, actually darts to Conall's waist and girdles him as a belt. Rather than killing the serpent, Conall allows it to live and then proceeds to attack and rob the fort of its great treasures that it previously protected. But what we get here is that there seems to be a relationship between a horned or antler-bearing deity, warrior or progenitor, and a chthonic dwelling, treasure-guarding serpent that encircled the waist of one of the one who chose to protect. So Cernunnos seems to have an underworld quality, but also seems to have an overworld quality as well. It's fascinating. Okay, let's go to the next image. Well, what's this? Yes, these are my pictures. Yeah. This is Roman. I have been to the archaeological crypt that goes that eventually it's in the plaza in front of Notre Dame, but starts to go under Notre Dame. So I'm actually showing you pictures of some of the Roman remains under Notre Dame. I think that's kind of cool. What do you think? And so we have here included here remnants of right here of the public bath. This is part of the ruins of the public bath. Let's go to the next section, next image. You can see there the hypocaust heating system there. You see a part of the, there it is. You see part of the city wall. Let's go to the next image. And you can see, the pillar there. I didn't get a picture of the island's port quay wall, but you have the idea. These were built around the 4th century CE, perhaps a little earlier. Let's go to the next image. Roman Lutetia was pretty extensive, and they had three major bathhouses. And yes, this is my photo. This is a picture of one of them. This is the Musée de Cluny with a frigidarium that still exists in part. This is the cold water baths. Let's go to the next image. The walls have been conserved or actually really have a very distinctive good quality of marble. In fact, let's go to the next image. I'll show you. It's very beautiful. Oh, sorry. There's me. Sorry. Next image. So this is in the interior. Look at this. How beautiful, right? Clean and polished. I mean, so clearly there's money in ancient Lutetia. They also found the ruins of a forum. Go to the next image. And they found, yes, an image of it. They found the remains of an amphitheater. I didn't get a chance to get to the amphitheater, but all the other pictures that you saw, of course, are mine. Okay. Okay, so let's look at me for a few moments. So what happens is Lutetia, it flourished under the Romans, and then also during the short-lived Gallic Empire from 260 to 274. It was sacked when the Emperor Aurelian reconquered this new state and took away the troops from the Rhine frontier. So there's some conflict here. Since it was now obvious that the city needed defenses, the forum in the south and the island were fortified. So now you have fortifications going on. And of course, the necessary stones were taken from the amphitheater that we just saw. By the mid-3rd century, the city had a Christian community. We do not know much about them, but their presence is deducted from the remains that we have found, and also one who was martyred, and his name is Saint Denis. Now, Saint Denis is also known as Saint Dionysius. You will have to memorize that. What does that have to do with Notre Dame? You will see. But it'll be way later on. Putting all these threads together. I mean, after all, we just went underneath Notre Dame and we saw the Roman ruins. And of course, we didn't find the Temple of Jupiter. It was seen to be obliterated. But also, the other part is I want to bring up is that when Notre Dame was built, part of it was directly built right on the surface of the original bedrock, because the bishop, we'll talk about solely later on, wanted a clean break. I didn't want anything underneath it. But most likely the Christian church that will be built on the site will also utilize the materials from the Temple of Jupiter as well, but we're not there quite yet. But let's talk about St. Dionysius, Saint Denis, right? He was beheaded during the reign of Valerian, excuse me. Let's take a look at the old Saint Denis. He's typically, next image. He's typically represented holding his head as he was beheaded for his faith and known to carry his head for some distances, right? So the story follows that he was a virtuous man with a profound knowledge of the workings of the universe. Fabian, Bishop of Rome from 236 to 250, sent him with other bishops to the Church of Gaul. This is following the persecution of Decius. And he was there to reestablish the greatly reduced church. He arrived here at the city. And upon this island, Saint Denis established a church around 275 CE. Here, of course, he preached, and many converted to Christianity, with a local pagan priest becoming angry enough to incite a mob against him. The governor, by the name of Facinius, actually his name is Facinius Sicinius. I'm not kidding you. Facinius Sicinius, Fescenninus, and last name Sissinninus. You know, if you're looking for a great name for your child, I think we should go for Facinius Sicinius. What do you think? Okay. Anyway, he ordered them to stop preaching, or this governor, or face the consequences. Of course, Denis kept preaching, and so Denis, with Rusticus and Eleutherius, were imprisoned, tortured, and finally beheaded upon a hill known as Montmartre. Of course, Montmartre is the place of the martyrs, and that's where the church known as Sacre-Cœur is built. So there you have the bodies of Denis, and two others were then given an honorable burial. And there was a shrine that was directly placed over their place of their bodies. The shrine later on was replaced by a beautiful basilica. But according to one legend, after his head was cut off, Denis is said to have picked it up and walked several miles from the summit of the hill, preaching a sermon along the way. I'm trying to figure out how he would do that. Was his mouth being animated, or was it coming right out of his neck? I don't know. But there you have it. The site where he stopped preaching and actually died was marked by a small shrine that developed into the Saint Denis Basilica, which then became the burial place for the kings of France. So this is a bigger deal than you thought, right? So you have the kings of France now being buried here at this location where he literally laid down his head. Now, of course, we move on. Lutetia in late antiquity, next image, will be associated with another individual, heroism. That is, of course, Saint Genevieve, who lived between 420 to 502. Genevieve, the main source, of course, is a hagiography, so not that great a source. And she's known, of course, for her piety and living as a nun. In 451, when the Huns, led by King Attila, right, were about to attack Lutetia, so the Huns were at the edge of Lutetia, she convinced the people of Lutetia not to flee. Her prayers were sufficient to save the city. Instead, Attila changed his mind and he attacked Orleans instead. Saint Genevieve is also associated with bringing food to Lutetia in 464, when the Frankish king by the name of Childeric was besieging Lutetia. During the same siege, Genevieve went to the enemy leader and convinced him to take better care of his prisoners of war. The siege led to nothing, and the city was to remain part of the realm controlled by a certain Sagrius, who's the last Roman governor of this part of Gaul, right? Genevieve was very popular, and she also cherished her devotion of Saint Denis and wished to erect a chapel in his honor to house his relics. And we see, of course, what will happen. Let's go to the next image. So around 475, Genevieve purchased some land at the site of the saint's burial and exhorted the neighboring priests to use their utmost endeavors to make sure that this is built. They said, well, but we have no lime. So she sent them to the bridge of Paris, where they learned the whereabouts of large quantities of this material from a conversation with two swineherds. After this, the building proceeded successfully, and they built it. A small chapel became a famous place of pilgrimage during the 5th and 6th centuries. Of course, then eventually the Frankish king by the name of Clovis provided Genevieve her own abbey to head up. And of course, this is a representation of the abbey of Saint Genevieve. The Benedictines later took over the site, and eventually, unfortunately, this building was destroyed in 1793 by the French, right, during the French Revolution. Okay, now we get to the earlier. Let's go to the next image. Okay, so I think we'll stay with this image. Actually, we'll put this down temporarily. I just want to talk a little bit, and then we'll put this image right up after this. Okay, so basically now we're entering the early Middle Ages. And so now the site of the future Notre Dame, which was once occupied by a temple of Jupiter, is they now build at this time an early Christian basilica. It was built around the 4th century CE and was dedicated to Saint Stephen. Of course, Saint Stephen is known as Saint Antien, right? Which we just saw a few seconds the outline. So let's go back to the image so you kind of see where it is. Thank you. So you see where Notre Dame will be located. So Saint Etienne was located kind of right next to it. So kind of where the facade of where Notre Dame is with the 2 towers, that's where you can see the apse was located right in that area, and you can see the nave right there. So we have a general idea of where it is. Okay. In fact, after what happens is that during the Carolingian period, the church is expanded, and about 40 meters to the west of Notre Dame. This cathedral measured 70 meters long and included a nave and 4 aisles, separated by marble columns. The cathedral was lavishly decorated with mosaics. The builders did reuse Roman building materials. In some instances, such as the columns, this reuse would be observable, of course. So there you have that. There's also the baptistry of the Church of St. John the Baptist, which was built prior to 452 and was located on the north side of the Church of Saint Antoine. This baptistry was later demolished in the 18th century. So you do have the idea that this place was pretty well occupied there. Also, of course, you have another building, Notre Dame. Basically, there's actually a small church for travelers and pilgrims. And again, this was a site of the future church of Notre Dame. Okay, so let's go to the next image. So what happens now is the Vikings come. And the Vikings kind of ruin everything. So next image. So what will happen is that Charles the Bald fought against the Vikings, who devastated the country of the north, and as well as Seine and Loire Valley, even up to the borders of Aquitaine. In March of 845, a fleet of 120 Danish Viking ships containing more than 5,000 men entered the Seine under the command of a Danish chieftain named Ragnar, right? And he attacked. He defeated a division of the Frankish army. He took 111 of their men as prisoners and hanged them on the island on the Seine. So he hung them here. This was done in honor of the Norse god Odin. By the way, they arrived on March 29th of that year. And so then you're thinking that's it. Well, guess what? The Vikings returned. Next image again during the 860s. And again, this is, of course, a big disaster. The siege of Paris went from 885 to 886. Not a good time. Let's go to the next image. Some of the churches were, but what happened is that a miracle happened. The miracle happened, and that is actually during the first raid. And the miracle is Ragnar during the first raid. What happened is that he attacked the Abbey of Saint-Germain-des-Prés, which was on the outskirts of medieval Paris, and he attributed the plague to the power of Saint-Germain of Paris. And so this is why he's attacking this establishment, this church. So who is Saint-Germain of Paris? He was basically the Bishop of Paris, and he stamped out pagan practices in Gaul. He's very austere. But what happened is, in dedication to him, they built a 5th century church, and it was founded by Childeric I, who was the son of Clovis. And this became the burial place for the Merovingian kings. But it was plundered by the Vikings, who didn't seem to like this church and its power very much. Let's go to the next image. But I do have kind of a cool picture, and that is that there's one little section of the church that survived the Viking raids, and this is a part of it. And then much of it was rebuilt during the 11th century in stone, right? But here we go. We're ready for the adventure to begin. So, and you're thinking, okay, Dr. Rietveld, we're ready. We're ready for Notre Dame. No, you're not ready yet. But wait a minute. We've already established quite a few things. We established the Temple of Jupiter. We know that this is an ancient pagan worship spot. We've established the various churches that were located there or around the site. Okay, that's great. We even remember the whole idea that we got to recollect Saint Denis. That he's important to the story. So aren't we ready? No, we're going to go to another church, but we've already visited. Patience. It'll all come together. Let's go to the next image. It's going to throw you off. Chartres. What does Chartres have to do with Notre Dame? Oh, and so the mystery has begun. Let's go to the next image. Here's the rabbit hole. Yep, here we go. Two streams need to be examined to decipher the mystery that is Notre Dame in order to create a proper understanding of the background context of this cathedral. First, I'm going to go slowly. First, we must examine the school of thought involving various mystical notions arising out of Chartres, because these mystical notions and ideas that start at Chartres, start here, end up becoming part of a school known as the School of Notre Dame, located in Paris at the site of Notre Dame. Oh, that's pretty cool, right? Yeah. So what happens is that, and by the way, and eventually the School of Notre Dame will become the University of Paris. So we must realize that the Cathedral of Notre Dame arose out of an established school that predates the actual building of the Grand Cathedral itself. What? Notre Dame grew out of a school? Whoa, mind blown. What kind of things did they teach in the school? Oh, just you wait. Okay, the next part. Now I got you interested. Second, we must examine the philosophical, alchemical ideas that were involved in the creation of the Gothic style to begin with. What? You mean these ideas? The Gothic style is connected to these kinds of ideas? Oh, I want proof on this. You'll get it. And that means we have to examine, after we examine Chartres, we have to examine another church. Otherwise, nothing will make sense. And that's called Saint Denis, which is a forerunner of Notre Dame architecturally. So got this. So Chartres is going to create part of the thought world of Notre Dame, but so will Saint Denis. Will do the same thing, but also the architectural aspect of Notre Dame. These two together make Notre Dame. You didn't know it was that complicated, did you? Okay, so in the West, oh, it's going to get better. Next image. I like this image right there. Isn't that beautiful? I love that church so much. In the West, Greek thought, especially Neoplatonism, thrived within the school of Chartres. Wait, they're Neoplatonists in Chartres? Yeah. Okay. So let's go to Fulbert of Chartres. By the way, most people do not know this information. Next image. In fact, it was at Claremont Graduate University. I was doing some research, and I did work on William of Theory, and I had an aha moment that William of Theory was using using not the Latin translated Plato, but was using the Greek translated Plato for various of his works, but also he was using works that are connected to the three Cappadocians. Gregory of Nyssa, Gregory of Nantes, and Basil the Great. And I came up to this, and the professors, Karen Torgerson at the time, was pretty excited about this. And all of a sudden, I was digging, and I came across. It's like, wow, there's a whole, yeah. And of course, people know this part, but they don't know how deep this runs. And so there we go. So this is Fulbert of Chartres, bishop of the city from 1006 to 1028. He established the school of Chartres, and he was known for his very deep devotion. Not only was he, well, we'll talk about that later, but devotion to the Virgin Mary, especially the cult of the Virgin Mary. Let's go to the next image. Yeah, so this, some people say this is the Black Madonna. We're going to talk about this a little bit. But that's a great picture. Let's take that down temporarily. We'll put it up in a few moments, and I want to talk to you a little bit. So it turns out that Chartres was once the site of Chartres was once a Druidic gathering place for the worship of various deities, including a great goddess. Julius Caesar, it's a good source, mentions that those known as the Carnuts, local tribe living around Chartres, met here also to solve various disputes too. There was a sacred well that was located here, and it's still located there. It's still there today. It's mostly dry throughout the year. It was later called the Well of the Holy Strong Ones, although the miracles attributed to it during the Christian era were said to be because many holy martyrs were drowned here. Other scholars will go, yes, but the idea is, well, the holy strong ones, you can hear that the title goes back to an era before Christianity. So this is a sacred well. Now, we have indeed found throughout France many goddess images that do resemble Madonnas. So this is not unusual. And so during the Roman era, in fact, Persephone, who is queen of the underworld, became very popular in Gaul. And many believe, including Bernard Gasset, that some kind of image to this Persephone of the underworld was dedicated at the site of Chartres. You see, because there was no longer, well, we'll talk about that in a few moments, there was an image called Our Lady of the Underworld that was believed to descend from this image. This one dated from the 11th century, so from the 1000s, which goes pretty far back, but they believe that it goes back further. Unfortunately, during the French Revolution, they literally took this image and they burned it at the stake. This Our Lady of the Underworld was located in the area of the crypt. Many would go down to this crypt. They believe that miracles would happen there. They would sleep in the crypt, and in their dreams, they would have answers to their various questions and problems and ailments. So it acted like an ancient incubation chamber. Then later on, you had another image, and that is, let's go back to this image again. In 1508, they made Our Lady of the Pillar. And this was made out of wood. Let's go to the next image. This is my picture, of course. This one was meant to replace a 13th century Madonna that was made out of silver and gold. Now, it was called the Black Virgin, but the reality is it wasn't black. It had turned black as a result of various candles. So in 2013, they cleaned it, and people are pretty upset. They're like, we're looking for the Black Madonna, and all of a sudden there's this Madonna there with pink cheeks. Looking at them going, wait, what happened? Well, I mean, they removed the soot, that's kind of what occurred. But of course, people are still upset about the loss of the other Madonna. This is, of course, known as Our Lady of the Pillar. And so in 1857, they made another Our Lady of the Underworld and they place it in the crypt as well. And pilgrims then, of course, go back there to be healed. So Chartres is in the center of Marianology. It's the center of the veneration of Mary. In fact, Chartres is also known, next image, known for what's called the Sancta Camicia, supposedly worn during the Annunciation or the birth of Christ. Fulbert of Chartres also believed fervently in the Mother Mary's ability to intercede, but apparently it didn't always work out. In fact, the Chartres Cathedral burned down in 1020, and Fulbert ordered the construction of a new church, which eventually burned down again in 1194. Next image, with only 2 towers that remain. This is my photo, which is the west facade. And therefore, most of the current Gothic style cathedral of Chartres dates after Saint Denis, and basically with Notre Dame's construction going on at the same time. Now, the focus of this school of Chartres, which of course will directly then go into, let's go to the next image. I should show you that one. Look at that. Look at the archway. Those 3 arches are a recollection of the triple arch in Roman construction, the Triumph Arch. So I thought that was pretty cool. So the focus of the school's teaching was upon the 7 liberal arts. First of all, the trivium, or the study of logic, grammar, and rhetoric, and into the quadrium, which is arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. Well, astronomy. Yeah, you think it's astronomy, but it's closer to astrology in many cases. You'll see that. Let's go look at another image of the original facade. This is absolutely beautiful. Again, these are my images, but my pictures, but I love it. Amongst those active at this school, next image, was actually Bernard of Chartres, who systematically attempted to reconcile Platonism with the newly arrived works of Aristotle from Muslim Spain. According to John of Salisbury, which we'll hear from soon, Bernard composed a prose treatise that is on periphery, along with a metrical treatise on the same subject. In fact, Bernard was more focused upon the study of Plato, especially his Timaeus. Let's go to the next image. And less interested in the Neoplatonists than Aristotle. Although this means that the school of Chartres was this island in a sea of scholasticism. So while everybody is going, ooh, look, Aristotle's coming from Spain. Let's go crazy about Aristotle in every single way, and let's blend it in with our form of Christianity. Meanwhile, this island of Chartres says, Plato, Plato, Plato. And that's pretty much what happened. Okay, so the Timaeus was an incredibly important idea to this school of thought. And so here we go. So what's a Timaeus about? Well, let's go ahead and we'll have me for just a little bit here. The Timaeus, according to Timaeus, there is a distinction between the physical world and the eternal world. The physical one is the world which changes and perishes. Therefore, it is the object of opinion and, of course, unseasoned sensation. The eternal one never changes. Therefore, it is able to be apprehended by reason. Timaeus continues on, and he explains that the creation of the universe, which he describes as a handiwork of a divine craftsman, who is the demiurge, being good, wanted to be there as much as good as he possibly can for the world. The demiurge then is said to bring about the order of substance by imitating an unchanging and eternal model or paradigm. So what he does is he sees a blueprint of the heavens above, and he wants to make this blueprint, this archetype of the heavens above, into the world below, emanating it down. Okay, so it's a prototype. So in a sense, it is possible through the emanations to take images from above to bring them below, right? The Demers, of course, also what will happen is this idea, the Timaeus also describes a substance as the lack of balance, in which the four elements, earth, air, fire, water, were shapeless, mixed in constant motion. But the hope and desire is to create a balance of the elements, to create order out of disorder, to organize it. Now, you're thinking, okay, so but we're talking about a cathedral. Let's go to the next image. And we're going to go some places. Next image. So, basing his beliefs upon Plato and the Neoplatonists. Oh, this is the next guy. I guess the other image didn't get there. Sorry about that. Okay, we'll take it down temporarily. Thank you, though. Basing his beliefs upon Plato and the Neoplatonists, Bernard asserted that there are three categories of reality: God, matter, and idea. God is supreme reality. Matter was brought out of nothingness by God's creative act and is the element which, in union with ideas, constitute the world of sensible things. Ideas are the prototypes by means of which the world was from all eternity present in the divine mind. According to John of Salisbury, Bernard also taught that there exist native forms, copies of the ideas created with matter, which are alone united with matter. What's going to happen is there comes a very strong belief that ideas of heaven above can, in the physical world, be manifest. You're going, we're talking about cathedral. Oh. So in a sense, you could have a representation of the divine prototype, the divine, the divine realm on earth, even in a representation. Like a what? Like a church, like a cathedral. As above, so below, and all of a sudden you're having an epiphany. Wait a second. Gothic cathedrals, you're going to go further on this, aren't you? Yeah, you are. But you mean there's Platonism involved in some of the conceptions behind it? Yes, we're going to go further. Don't worry. We're going to go down the rabbit hole. But I want you to know that there's something more here. And that's why we're going here. Now, John of Salisbury asserts that Bernard of Chartres used to say that we, the moderns, are like dwarves perched on the shoulders of giants, who are the ancients. And thus we are able to see more and farther than the latter. And this is not at all because of the acuteness of our sight or the stature of our body, but because we are carried aloft and elevated by the magnitude of the giants. And so Bernard was one of the first known to use the phrase that will eventually become, we are standing on the shoulder of giants. And the giants are those of the ancient world. All right, let's keep going. Next image, William of Conches. Next image, yeah. 1090 to 1154, he was a student of Bernard of Chartres. He was warned by William of Thury to refrain from many of his high Platonic theological doctrines. Concentrate his studies on the natural sciences, right? Let's do that instead. Nevertheless, William was famous for his commentary on Plato's Timaeus. They're obsessed with Plato, which has survived the test of time. Therefore, Plato was available to William of Thury, of course, as well. William Conches explains the world as composed of elements, which he defines as the simplest and minimum parts of any body, simple in quality, minimum in quantity. He identifies the elements with the traditional four elements of fire, air, water, earth, but not as they are perceived, since as such as they are neither simple in quality nor minimum in quantity. Earth, for example, contains something hot, something cold, something dry, and something wet at the same time. Pure elements are not to be perceived, says William, but to be grasped by reason through an abstract division of the sensible bodies. Each of these pure elements has two of the four basic quantities. Earth is cold and dry, water is cold and humid, air is hot and humid, and fire is hot and dry. The perceivable elements called elementata are made of pure elements. The sensible earth, however, especially a pure earth, the sensible water, especially a pure water, and so on. So again, innovations happening here under William of Conscience as the school progresses. And then next one, you have Gilbert de la Porree. Next image. He's a pupil of both Bernard and of Chartres and Anselm of Lyon. He was another active Platonist. In the commentary on the treatise of the Trinity of Boethus, he proceeds from the metaphysical notion that pure or abstract being is prior to nature, to that which is. This pure being is God and must be distinguished from the triune God as known to us. God is incomprehensible, and the categories cannot be applied to determine his existence. Of course, what's going to happen here is Gilbert is going to cause some trouble, right? Gilbert taught logic and theology in Chartres and took over as chancellor after Bernard. It is in Paris where we also know he gave lectures. From a passage from the text Dialogue with Ratius and Everard by the Cistercians Everardus, we learn that Gilbert was more popular in Paris with his Platonic ideas than even in Chartres. Everardus writes that he was fourth to attend Gilbert's lectures in Chartres, and he was 300th to attend them in Paris. In fact, in Paris, John of Salisbury attended Gilbert's lectures in 1141 and was greatly influenced by them. There we go. Now we're making a connection. Now the school of Chartres is starting to, which is Platonic, is now moving over to the school that is located in Paris, which is the school of Notre Dame. Woo, okay. All right. So what happened is, John of Salisbury. Okay, so 1110s, 1180s. Let's go next image. He was originally from Salisbury. It's pretty obvious. England, and is known for his accounts of the gradual evolution to the University of Paris. This University of Paris, of course, starting off with Peter Abelard, who is very much a follower of Aristotle and applies it to Latin theology. But after Abelard left Paris, John left Paris for Chartres and joined the Platonists, studying under William of Conscience. John then returned to Paris, where Gilbert went after leaving Chartres in 1140 and attended his talks in Paris, most notably, as he said before, in 1141. And then finally, of course, we have John Sarrazin. Very important. John Sarrazin. We don't have a picture of him. He's a monk from Saint Denis Monastery. He retranslated the works of Pseudo Dionysius, and so he's very important too. So you're going, okay, that's great, Dr. Rietveld. Okay, you have more to share with us, right? Okay, so what happens is the school of Chartres is slowly, gradually moving over to the school of Notre Dame, and many notable professors. Here we go. We're going there. The school of Chartres began to decline in the latter half of the 12th century, which is the exact time when another school began to rise, that being, of course, the School of Paris, that would eventually become the University of Paris, which would include the school within the Abbey of St. Victor and the School of Theology. And the School of Theology was located in the chapel now, we mentioned, the chapel of Notre Dame, which would eventually be torn down to create the famous cathedral, but would still house the school for many decades after that until the two branches formally merged in 1200. So up until 1200, as Notre Dame was being built, this school still met inside of the new cathedral being built. And you kind of understand the thought system going on. It's a combination between Platonism and Aristotelian thought, but there's more, of course. Many notable professors taught at the school of Notre Dame as early as the 11th century, including Lambert, who was a disciple of Fulbert of Chartres, of course, making the link between the Chartres school and the school of Notre Dame even more direct. Because of his association with Fulbert of Chartres, Lambert was also very devoted to Our Lady, very devoted to the idea of Our Lady, making sense that he would be part of a school dedicated to Our Lady, which is what Notre Dame means. There's another early teacher there, also known as Drago of Paris. Of course, you're going to have a few interesting teachers there too. You have Monogold of Germany, who was there from 1030 to 1103. I mean, lived from 1030 to 1103. He opposed the acceptance by Christians of the view that the earth was a sphere, was round, based upon theological assumptions. You see, by this time, most everybody knew the world was round. And this guy's going, no, it's flat. It's flat. Wait, what was he living? He's living during the 1000s. Born around 1030, died around 1103. So take, some flat earthers. Wait, okay. Anyway, you also have Anselm of Leon, who died around 1120, who was one of the founders of biblical hermeneutics, which is kind of a big deal. Okay, so what happens now? Ready for the next link? Let's go to the next image. So notably, of course, that means that all these different things going on. You have, of course, Platonism going on in Chartres. You also have alchemy going on in Chartres. And all this gets reflected in the architecture of this building. Of course, astrology was one of the pursuits taken very seriously. They call it astronomy, and it's mostly astrology. And these are pictures that I took of, well, the zodiac. You see, Chartres is covered with the zodiac, covered with it. They're from the stained glass windows to the archivolts representing both the zodiac signs and the labors of the month. So let's take a look at some of these so you can see it for yourself. I see there's the double fish right there. You got Pisces. Next image. Yeah, so you kind of see the zodiac there. Yeah. Okay. Next image. I see Cancer there. Yeah. There you go. So you get my point. Let's go a few more images so you get the idea. The whole composition is the wheel of the zodiac, and it's placed right there at the side entrance of Chartres Cathedral. Next image. What in the world am I doing? And what is that? That is the labyrinth. The labyrinth. You mean there's a labyrinth in Chartres? Of course. Well, what happens is this. This labyrinth dates from around 1200. It is the largest one in France. The labyrinth at times was intended to represent the long and maze-like path towards salvation. At least that's what they'll tell you. And of course, there's only one way to get there, and that's to the next image, to the clover-shaped center. The pious pilgrim is to proceed on this labyrinth on their knees, which I did in part, just, at least they used to, although it's kind of hard, right? Sometimes, by the way, just an interesting little fun fact, sometimes actually, when it comes to the various labyrinth, in many of the cathedrals in France, clergy actually danced on the labyrinth on Easter Sundays, joined by their canons and chaplains, but they don't tell you that today. But another idea is that it was placed here in 1200 because it also represented the pilgrimage to the Holy Land. So not only to the holy city of New Jerusalem, but also a pilgrimage to the Old Jerusalem, which was located in, of course, Palestine. Here's the interesting part of this. This is 1200. Things aren't going very well when it comes to pilgrimages. Because at this time, the First Crusade, Second Crusade, we're moving on, Third Crusade, and this is around the time of the Fourth Crusade. This is made. Much of the Holy Land is already lost at this time. So this is kind of a vicarious way to get to the Holy Land, but not get to the Holy Land. the idea is that the center area where the clover is, that will be Jerusalem. And so what you do is you want to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, but you can't get all the way there. You can't afford the trip by boat or by various routes. It's too dangerous. Lots of bad things are happening. But what I can do is I can go on my knees, go along this labyrinth and get to the center, and that will be understood as a pilgrimage. And you're going, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea, because you see, the idea is that this is a prototype. Oh, no, here you go. This is the idea of a pilgrimage. So if you operate within that idea of a pilgrimage and you follow this, as above, so below, but also this ideal pattern being connected to all the way to the journey to the old Jerusalem, what you've done is you've effectively done it. You go to the end and you've done your pilgrimage. And so it's counted to your reckoning that this was accomplished. Oh, you got to love this. Next image. So this is some of the other images there. I'll take a look at the floor. Once again, it's pretty amazing. Let's get a close-up of that one. Next image. There's just symbols everywhere along this cathedral, which represent all of these ideas going on here, these mystical ideas and perspectives. Okay, so let's see my face, and we're going to have some fun now. We're going to move to another place. Yes. Now, in his 1926 masterpiece called The Mystery of the Cathedrals, Fusinelli claimed that the Gothic cathedrals were hermetic libraries in stone, with the secret of alchemy displayed for all who could to read it. Right? So the secret of alchemy displayed for all who could to read it. Now, you'll see his point when we get to Notre Dame. These cathedrals were a demonstration, not just of the alchemical philosophy, but also how this philosophy animated a lost medieval golden age. As part of the Gnostic paradigm, he states, alchemy was influenced by Gnostic eschatological teachings, such as the path of return by the small lights to the one light, path of return from the small lights to the one light. Now, here we go. But he asks, Fulcanelli asks the question. He says, why did Western Europe build so many churches in the 300 years after the year 1000? What need was there in a Europe with hardly a fifth of its present population for temples so vast that they are now rarely filled even on the holiest of days? How could an agricultural civilization afford to build such costly edifices, which a wealthy industrialism can barely maintain, by the way? And who designed them? Who decided on the artwork, laid out the ground plan, and supervised the construction and decoration? How does this get started? It gets started by the First Crusade that conquers Jerusalem. And what happens is that very quickly, all the wealth from Palestine and beyond starts to fill the coffers of those in Western Europe. And then you have the establishment of the Templars and their wealth coming over to Western Europe from their loot, from their booty. It's pouring on in. So there's money coming. However, there's more than just that. See, there's new ideas, literature, mysteries are being discovered and brought over. And so this brings us to Sugar. So let's talk about Abbot Sugar. Let's go to the next image. He was born in poverty in the village of Saint-Denis. Oh, good. He was very intelligent. He kind of stood out. He became friends with the future king of France, Louis. So this friendship was came about between also between his son and the brilliant scholar Philip I. And so what happens is that he is sent to Rome several times on diplomatic missions, and then he started to learn more about the various discoveries being made during the 12th century, various ideas that are coming across, and he starts to wonder about it. You see, then in 1123, he becomes the abbot of Saint-Denis, and so he pressed for the rebuilding of the old Carolingian church of Saint-Denis into something that would be of wonder. Let's go to the next image. A wonder for the rest of Europe. And so what he did is he envisioned his church as the center of a new illuminated Christianity. So, of course, the old Carolingian abbey was consecrated in 775, although it goes back earlier to a chapel. According to one of the abbey's main foundational myths, a leper who was sleeping in the nearly completed church the night before its planned consecration witnessed a blaze of light from which Christ, accompanied by Saint Denis and a host of angels, emerged to conduct the consecration ceremony himself. Before leaving, Christ healed the leper, tearing off his diseased skin to reveal a perfect complexion underneath. A misshapen patch on a marble column was said to be the leper's former skin, which stuck there when Christ discarded it. Having been consecrated by Christ, the fabric of the building was itself regarded as sacred. So this is the early stories. But now it's time to rebuild it, to reshape it. And so he came across a writer. To the next image. And this is the big moment. This is it. You're looking at this image and going, hey, I'm still Dr. Rietveld. I'm not putting it all together. Oh, you will. We talked about Neoplatonism. We talked about these various schools. Who in the world is this? Well, this is Dionysus, or also known as Pseudo-Dionysus. What happens is this. Saint-Denis is also known as Saint Dionysus, and they get Dionysus confused with another Dionysus, the Pseudo-Dionysus who thrived during the 5th to early 6th century. They get it confused. So they think that it's the same guy. Now, Dionysus, the Areopagite, he was a Christian theologian and philosopher thriving during this period of time. And but because of this confusion, the confusion is that they confuse him with also Dionysus, who converted to Christianity by the Apostle Paul during his Mars Hill sermon, right? And subsequently became the Bishop of Athens. And then, of course, this becomes confused with the other Saint-Denis. And so it all becomes like this giant mess. Good thing. Why? Because this abbot thought that he was Saint-Denis. And so what happened is he started reading through these works. These works are works of Christian Neoplatonism, as well as a Gnostic theology of light. Here we go. Dionysus believed that every creature, visible or invisible, is a light brought into being by the Father of lights, and celebrated the divine light, God's holy fire, which animated the entire universe. Okay, so this is, of course, very close to the Gnostic idea of return. So this abbot took this theme to heart. In his 3 books, yeah, he wrote a book, 3 of them, on the building and consecration of the church, we find no less than 13 separate inscriptions celebrating this holy light. 13. And one of them, a verse written to celebrate a gilded bronze gate, Sugar tells us, bright is the noble work, this work shining nobly. Enlighten the mind so that it may travel through the true lights to the true light where Christ is the true door. And then he comes up with this idea. So now Neoplatonic ideas and Gnostic ideas are coming together. You didn't know that this is happening at this time, did you? And he comes up with a theory known as lux continua, or known as the continuous light, that we must have continuous light. With these 2 words, he announced the birth of the Gothic style in many ways. What? Yeah. And of course, obviously, this has its roots in this Gnostic Illuminism of alchemy. He points on that the walls of sanctity would be shattered because it needs to let the light in. We need to let the light in. We need to be free of the darkness, not only within, but without. And that goes right into architectural theory. Whoa, so here we go. You see what happens now is that the darkness and the heaviness of Romanesque architecture would now be replaced by the flow of continuous radiance, which is at the heart and soul of the Gothic style. And it happens at this exact church. He innovates it. He wants to bring his theology of light and bring it to a building of stone to represent this ideal, which is, of course, based upon the archetype of the heavens above. And wow, this is, again, Plato would be smiling. But wait, what is Romanesque architecture beforehand? Because we got to understand that. So quickly, let's roll it. Next image. Romanesque architecture. Oh, I like this. This is an example, by the way, I want to mention of the zodiac of the stars. This is a great image. This is Pseudo Dionysus, by the way. This is a representation of his ideas. These are the ideas that this abbot adopts and brings it into his theology of continuous light. Can you see it here? Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Next image. Romanesque architecture. There I am at Worms. So basically, it's a mixture of ancient and Byzantine styles. Go to the next image. Romanesque is known for its fortress-like look. It has massive, thick walls. And the taller the walls were, the thicker they had to be to support these giant edifices of stone. Let's go to the next image. And of course, as a result of that, take a look at this. The taller they were, the thicker the walls, but also the deeper the windows. And conversely, the darker it will become potentially within the church. Let's look at the next image. So, I mean, they're beautiful. I love Romanesque. I mean, it's powerful, right? It is simple. It's fortress-like. Look at the next image. This is Spire, by the way. My picture's from Spire. Yeah, there's me contemplating things. But it is significantly darker, right? But I love the sturdy pillars. I love the barrel vaults. Let's get another image here. Look at that. You know, it's beautiful. But yeah, quite dark. So what needs to happen, though, is we need to bring the light in. And so how are we going to do that? Okay, so there's a few ways. First of all, I want to mention that he wants to have more windows, and he wants them to look beautiful. So let's go. So what happens is, next image. So by 1133, our good abbot informs us that he collected artists and craftsmen from all the lands, including Arabic glassmakers. You see, he didn't invent stained glass. In fact, the Fatimids in Egypt had used it in their mosques for over a century. Glass making was also connected to alchemical practices, both within the Muslim world, but also later on in the Christian world. It's amazing kind of alchemy from their perspective. It's a transformation of certain sands into glass that's so beautiful. In fact, the Fatimid scholars and mystics of Cairo use colored glass, fashion, and geometrical patterns as a meditation tool. So we see this, and we see this a little bit in the glass of the El Asghar Mosque. And so what happens is this radiance, this beauty in stained glass windows. Hey, the abbot from Saint Denis wants to bring it there. So, but that means, so he was very enthusiastic. Yes, let's have these beautiful windows to bring the light of heaven here. Now, obviously, he did not actually build Saint Denis. But he was a source of inspiration for the master mason working for him. We don't know that person's name. But what happens is powered by this idea of the holy light, inspired by the pseudo Dionysius, he started to build the west front of the church. Let's go to the next image. And it starts off, you can see here, as still looking kind of Romanesque, right? It's still kind of big. It's still kind of bulky. You have, of course, a traditional, almost Carolingian facade. It looks like a triumph arch, the Arch of Constantine, for example. You notice it has a three-part division with three large portals that we saw also, by the way, at Chartres. But then he decided to change things around. So here, let's next image. And all of a sudden, he got an idea. Look how beautiful these are. But the problem is, here his master mason utilized architectural features already in use in Romanesque designs. He used the pointed arch, the ribbed vault, the ambulatory, radiating chapels, but he added new features too. Let's go to the next image. Look at this beautiful rose window. This is the one here at Saint Denis, right? And of course, next image. But he came up with something else with the master craftsman. You see, we have a problem. And that is, the larger the building of stone, the thicker the walls will be, the deeper the windows, and the darker it will be. What can we do? What we do is we create something called flying buttresses. This is what's going to happen right here. Now, we do have experiments with the flying buttress. In fact, we have them at the Basilica of San Vitale, which I visited before in Ravenna, excuse me, which is constructed between 526 to 547. It was also practiced in Durham Cathedral, excuse me. But what basically happens here is, when it comes to Romanesque and the regular basilica style, the entire weight of the roof presses outward and directly upon the walls. And as I said, the higher the structure, the thicker the walls. So with the creation of the flying buttresses, the entire weight of the roof was then carried by the ribs of the vault that then went outside of the church to a series of counter supports. Next image. Leaving the weight of the roof off the side walls. As a result, the buttress freed the initial walls of the structure, and as a result, these walls could be higher and they could be thinner. And this permitted the creation of large windows to allow light to flood the interior. Next image. And there you have it. Isn't that wonderful? So what's going to happen here is, well, Gothic architecture is created. You don't have to have those thick walls anymore. They can be nice and thin because the weight is distributed on the flying buttresses. But now that they're thin, guess what you can do? You can make bigger windows. Bigger windows that are, of course, stained glass. And so that way it will fill your church with light, the very light that he wanted so much to wash upon his cathedral. This abbot creates the Gothic style. He is, in a sense, I mean, he supports it as far as his idea, because all basically the abstract idea, let's go to the next image, you can see an example of it on this church, is like, you know what? Maybe told the master builder, can you make the walls thinner so I can have more light? He may not have figured out the physics, but whoever the master builder is, figure it out. Even though they had the flying buttresses before, as I mentioned before, in Byzantine as well as into other structures, it was never made quite this way before. This is an innovation. And look, they can go super thin when it comes to those walls. Let's go to the next one. It's amazing. I love it. Next image. And so he boldly inscribed the following on the nave, so there would be no doubt what his influence was. He declares, he's now saying directly, when the new rear part is joined to that in the front, the church shines, brighten in its middle. For bright is that which is brightly coupled with the bright, and which the new light pervades. Bright is the noble work enlarged in our time. I, who was Shigar, have been the leader while it was accomplished. Unquote. Yay. Oh, wow. This is pretty great. Now, next image. I want to kind of demonstrate this. So here is, of course, the church. Here's the church plan. You can see the original church there and how it grew. And I love this next one. Let's like next image. You see those dark bits? That's where the weight of the church is. You see before the outline of the Carolingian church, you see how it's solid, moving into being a Romanesque church. See how solid it was. That's where the hatchwork is. Now take a look at just what is in black. That is where the supports are. Look how much room there is to be as a result of that. You know, there's so much room in a structural sense. So this lattice work of stone can now accompany these thin walls, and the weight of the entire structure is only on these black things that you see. That's it. It's it. It's a miracle. Next image, right? So look at this. Beautiful. You get these, now you can get these sheets of glass and stained glass. And of course, I want you to notice the images there. Yeah, of course, you have all this interesting symbolism. Of course, next image. Oh, there we go. The whole place is absolutely bathed in light. And so there you have it. This style then spread throughout all of central France and then all over Europe, from England to Germany, Portugal to northern Italy. The collection of artists and craftsmen assembled by this abbot developed into schools and guilds that traveled throughout Europe for the next 2 centuries. 12 years after this good abbot's death in 1151, his student, yes, Sugar's student, the Bishop of Paris, Maurice de Sully and his master mason, William of Paris, paid him the compliment of bettering his designs because they will now try to top it with Notre Dame. Now Notre Dame makes sense. It didn't make sense before. Now it does, right? Now you understand what Notre Dame represents. You know the deeper meanings behind it. And once again, by the way, a direct connection. Did you see it? Between he's a student of the guy who had this built. Will be connected, of course, to Notre Dame. Okay, here we go. Jumping in to this. So the cornerstone of Notre Dame was dedicated by King Louis the Seventh and Pope Alexander the Third in the year 1163. Let's with the idea of creating a larger church building, and of course, let's go to the next image. And obviously, this was inspired also by Maurice de Sully, who was, of course, the one who he will become the Bishop of Paris from 1160 to his death in 1190. So from 1160 to 1190, Maurice de Sully is in charge. He had arrived in Paris in 1140, right at the time of the Platonist Gilbert and John Salisbury. And yes, he did study theology. He eventually became a well-known professor of theology and an eloquent preacher as well, and associated, of course, with the Cathedral School of Notre Dame. Among his fellow professors was Peter Lombard, who was the magister at the Cathedral School of Notre Dame in 1145. Peter Lombard was known for his Libri Quota Citatatum, written in 1150, which became the most important work of systematic compilation of theology up until the 16th century. Both Maurice de Sully and Peter Lombard thrived here. Upon the death of Peter Lombard, 1160, Maurice de Sully became archbishop and would last, of course, for the next 3 decades. He will be in charge. Oh, I guess I should show Peter Lombard, next image. There we go. Now, next image. Under Maurice, construction on the great cathedral was at a very rapid pace for medieval standards. I mean, this was consecrated. This church was consecrated. It was started out, right? In 1163. By 1170, enough of the structure was built to house the Cathedral School of Notre Dame, which would eventually merge with the University of Paris in 1200, as decreed by King Philippe Auguste. The back choir and the 2 ambitories were completed in 1177, only 14 years following the foundation of the church. You see it back there. You have, of course, the next image. During this period, Maurice de Sully found himself immersed in a conflict between King Henry II of England and Thomas Becket. Maurice was also involved in another project, rebuilding the bishop's palace, next image, which was completed in 1179, becoming the official location for the coronation of Philip Augustus in 1179. The bishop's palace was later burned to the ground during the French Revolution, and it was never built again. With the next image, with the death of his father in 1180, Philip Augustus became known as Philip II of France, and the only surviving description of him is that he's a handsome fellow, bald but cheerful, ruddy complexion. So he continued the support for this great building. In 1185, enough of the sanctuary is completed for Heraclius, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, to preach his sermon, calling for the Third Crusade here. Between 1182 and 1190, 4 sections of the nave behind the choir were built, and the first traverses completed by 1190. Next image. Then, of course, you have the wooden frame, which primarily consisted of oak. And, of course, these trees were cut down between 1160 to 1170. it was actually the workers. I mean, this is what burned. This is the sad part. This is what was destroyed. In much of this was destroyed in the fire. But there you have it. Um, and so you also have a few relics there. Let's go to the next image. You have, it's kind of blurry here. You have, of course, a part of the crown of thorns was installed here. And let's take a look at the western facade. Next image was completed in 1240 with the upper gallery of the nave completed between 1225 and 1250. Pretty amazing. The cathedral on completion will be 130 meters long, 48 meters wide, 35 meters high. The cathedral pillars have a diameter of 5 meters. And of course, you have the famous twin facade towers. They are 69 meters of equal height. And to reach the top, you have to climb 387 steps. But of course, the view is spectacular. And I can tell you that personally. Take a look at these flying buttresses. So these flying buttresses, if you hadn't noticed, are even longer than the ones that we saw at Denis. Let's go to the next one. And so this allows for this cathedral to be even taller and in height. Let's go to the next image. And I think that's pretty amazing, right? Now, of course, next image, you do have the facade is the place and location of the rose window. This is on one side of it. Let's take a look at the next image, because there are 3 circular stained glass windows. This is the west rose window. This is the first. It's the smallest of the rose windows. It's completed about 1225, and of course located within a very thick circular stone frame. Unfortunately, the original glass is no longer extant, but new glass was restored in the 19th century. Let's go to the next image. But it's still beautiful. Next image. The north rose window was created around 1250 with the glasswork still intact from that time that was first fashioned. Beautifully filters the light. It features, next image, the image of Mary enthroned holding the Christ child. Let's go to the next one. Surrounding the Theotokos are images of kings and prophets from the Old Testament. I know my pictures didn't turn out very well in this one. Next one. But I tried. So you get the idea of this. The south rose window was created in 1260 and presents 94 medallions arranged in 4 circles depicting the life of Christ. But what happened is when rioters burned the nearby residence of the Archbishop during the French Revolution, the French Revolution of 1830, the window was again severely damaged. Villet de Luc restored them in 1861. And then the famous French glassmaker, Jacques Le Chevet, replaced many of them in the 1960s. So let's kind of go to the next image here. So there you have that. So you get the idea. So lots of replacements, lots of changes. All right, here we go. Here we go. So next image. But so the stone iconography, the Gothic Cathedral was a poor people's book, with the illiterate often learning about the Bible with stories illustrated through stone sculptures and stained glass windows. So you have, of course, have 12 apostles decorating the main entrance. However, one is pointing towards something. Let's go to the next image. You see, he's pointing. I don't have a picture of what he's pointing at, but he's pointing at an eagle. In fact, one angel and one apostle is pointing towards an eagle. The eagle, of course, is a symbol used to represent the ability to transform metal into gold. Like one of the philosopher's stones is a key property. We're going to look at this deeply in a little bit. The central, next image, the central portal to Panium on the west facade depicts the Last Judgment. There are depictions of sinners going to hell and saved going to heaven. There's a few other things here. Next image. So here you can see a little bit of detail of that. So heaven above, hell below, right? Of course, you see the sufferers. But then we have this next image. There's a scene of the archangel Michael and Satan depicted together, weighing the souls of the last judgment. Now, of course, the Bible doesn't mention Michael weighing souls on scales. That sounds very Egyptian to me. However, Proverbs 16:11 describes God himself judging people's attitudes and actions by using the image of scales of justice. So, also Matthew 16:27, Jesus says the angels will accompany him on judgment day when all people who have ever lived will receive consequences and rewards according to what they choose to do during their lives. And so maybe you have this idea of scales there. But why is it Michael, right? Why is Michael? So you're going to see some other ideas jumping into into Notre Dame. Here we go. Ready for the rabbit hole? Here it is. Next image. One very curious part of this arrangement is a scene of a serpent tempting Adam and Eve, dating from around 1210. Yet the serpent is not representing Satan at all, but is instead this beautiful woman. Let's take a look at the next one. With prominent breasts, but having a snake-like body coiled below and wrapped around the tree. Many scholars believe this is a depiction of Lilith, Adam's first wife, according to Jewish and some Christian traditions. According to the Midrashic literature, Adam's first wife was not Eve, but a woman by the name of Lilith, who was created in the first Genesis account. Only when Lilith rebelled and abandoned Adam did God create Eve in the second account as a replacement. An important 13th century contemporaneous, right, almost Kabbalic text by the name of the Book of Splendor, written by the Spaniard Moses de Leon. It is explained that at the time Jehovah created Adam, he created a woman, Lilith, who was like Adam and was taken from the earth. She was given to Adam as his wife, but there was a dispute between them about a matter that, when it came before the judges, had to be discussed behind closed doors. She spoke the unspeakable name of Jehovah and vanished. There's another account in the Alpha Betha of Ben Sira, anonymous collection of, again, Midrashic proverbs compiled around the 11th century, explains more explicitly that the conflict arose because Adam, as a way of asserting his authority over Lilith, insisted that she lie beneath him during sexual intercourse. Lilith, however, considering herself to be Adam's equal, refused, and after pronouncing the ineffable name, the magic name of God, she flew off into the air. Now, of course, what will happen is Lilith has earlier origins going back into the ancient Middle East, connected to the Lilitu that we see on various stories connected to Inanna, right? Going back also into the Hebrew Bible. So it goes way back. But here we are having a depiction of Lilith. It is Lilith. This is definitely not a Satan. This is definitely not a serpent per se. So we know that this tradition is here. Now, so despite the fact that she was not officially endorsed by Christian tradition, she still is identified with the serpent in Genesis 3 in some context, believe it or not, with the woman's head and of course, the torso of a snake. For example, again, of course, you have this image you see in Notre Dame. All right, so let's keep on going here. Of course, the left portal shows the lives of important saints of Paris, including Saint Anne, the mother of the Virgin Mary. And the right portal portrays the coronation of the Virgin Mary. We also have next image. We have the image of Saint Denis. Actually, let's go to the next image. This is Mary at the coronation here. Let's go Saint Anne. Let's go to the next image. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's a great one. Next one. There we go. We do have this image of Saint today. Hey, look, he's holding his head. The famous martyr, of course, who apparently was able to walk 6 kilometers after being beheaded. He's found here on the cathedral. Okay, so here we go. Let's go to the next image. We also have images of Our Lady everywhere to be seen in different places. Next image. Everything has representations. Once again, this is the portico dedicated to the Virgin Mary, and everything represents ideals or perspectives. Let's go to the next image so you can see what I'm talking about. You see, everything represents ideas of kings and priests, and obviously there's some deeper meanings here too. Next image. We're kind of going through this a little quicker because I want to get to something further on. Let's go to the next image. I also want to mention that stained glass windows also have archetypical connections and ideas attached to it. But let's go to the next image, and then we're right on. Okay, what's going on here? Located on the central pillar of the central door, we have a statue of a woman depicted as sitting on a throne with a scepter in her left hand and holding 2 books in her right hand. One book is shown as open, which is intended to represent the idea of public knowledge. The other book is depicted as closed, representing the idea of esoteric knowledge. We also have next to it a ladder of 9 steps, each representing the 9 steps that connect to alchemy, the 9 steps that alchemists take, and moving from common metals into gold. Obviously, since ancient times, there exists a variety of steps, some numbering 4, some 7, some 9, some 12 or more. But the Notre Dame Cathedral chooses 9 steps. The first step is calcination, depicted as the burning of the prima material into ash. The second step is dissolution, the chemical process involved in taking the ashes from the calcination and dissolving it into water. The third is separation, where the alchemist separates and filters the products of dissolution. The fourth is conjunction, where the alchemist combines the elements deemed worthy in separation into a new substance. The fifth is fermentation, where bacteria and other living organisms are introduced to the substance to continue its breakdown. This phase is sometimes called the putrefaction. The sixth is the distillation, where the solution is then boiled and condensed in order to purify the substance. The seventh is coagulation, where the substance is crystallized into solid state. And the eighth is multiplication in virtue. And of course, obviously, this is connected to the ninth, which is the multiplication of quantity. So you got virtue and quantity. And so what will happen is, here we go, next image. And so the central portal devoted to allegory, to allegory of alchemy, and hence related to transformation. So the central portal, excuse me, I need some water here, is connected to the allegory of alchemy. Yes, we have in Notre Dame images related to alchemy, and I'm going to describe them right now. First, on the left side of the porch, going left to right, we have an image of a woman holding a crow inside of a seal, with the crow representing black or death, and the woman representing putrefaction or fermentation in the alchemy. So this, of course, would be the fifth step. Black is viewed as the first color of death as the body begins to decompose. Many medieval thinkers take 4 steps of alchemy and various systems of thought, but this is a little different here. The next image we have, second, so go to the next one, is we have a man holding a shield with the caduceus and a snake coiled around a golden wand. This is an alchemical symbol for the incisive and solvent nature of mercury. This solvent nature, as described by Fulcanelli, basically avidly absorbs the metallic sulfur and holds it so powerfully that cohesion cannot become overcome. This is the poisonous worm that infects everything with its venom, unquote. The golden wand is the corporeal sulfur, which is then added to it. The solution of the sulfur, or in other words, its absorbing by the mercury, has given rise to many ideas, but the resulting body, which is homogeneous and perfectly prepared, retains this philosopher's mercury as its name, and of course the caduceus, as you can see here, as its symbol. As I mentioned, the snake is an aspect of mercury in its first state, and it is the golden wand that is connected to the corporeal sulfur. Now, you may also recognize the staff as carried by Hermes, right? That we see this in Greek mythology or in Roman iconography. It is a staff carried in the left hand of Mercury, the messenger of the gods, guide of the dead, and protector of merchants, shepherds, gamblers, liars, thieves. It is said that the wand would wake the sleeping and send the awake to sleep. I like that. If applied to the dying, their death was gentle. If applied to the dead, they return to life. So it kind of does the exact opposite. The caduceus relates directly to masonry through its meaning of harmony. So let's go to the next image. I know we're seeing this right on the walls there. Third, we have a woman with hair like kind of like looks like flames a little bit, holding a disc of a salamander, which lives in the fire and feeds in the fire, with the salamander representing the incombustible and fixed central salt. So this woman then is the personification of calcination. And the salamander was believed, by the way, to live in the fire. Did you guys know that? There's a belief they live, not only live on the fire, they actually feed on its fire. This is a belief. And so that therefore, the salamander represents the incombustible and fixed central salt. So there you have it. Let's go to the next image. The fourth, we have a man holding a ram and another holding that, so, you can't really make out the next part. But so, yeah, next image. The fifth is a woman holding a seal depicting triple stripes representing the shades, black, white, and red, and it's connected with evolution. And so this is the process of the evolution of these materials, which does not happen immediately. This happens as a result of a gradual process. All right, so natura non facit saltus, right? Next one, 6. We have the bas-relief of philosophy. This is the bas-relief of philosophy, represented as a lady holding a disc representing a cross, but the equal distant cross, not the Christian cross, the equal distant cross of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water. And also you can see there the sun and the moon, right? With an object in the upper left side. I think that is the sun. Now on the right side of the porch, the west wind has unfortunately weathered these figures away enough to make them kind of difficult to decipher, but there you have it. Let's go to the next image. So we lost, but on the 7th bas-relief, we have the alchemist protecting Athenor from outside forces while holding a stone in his other hand. In short, an Athenor is a furnace used to provide heat for alchemical digestion. Next one. The 8th bas-relief has a lady holding up a griffin. It's an independent. The griffin with its head of an eagle and a body of a lion, representing the first conjunction, which happens little by little over time, which alchemists call the eagles. So you have that. The next one. The 9th one has a woman holding up a piece of wood with the emblem depicting an oak branch, again referring to what she is holding and understood as representing the materials needed to create the solvent. The next one. The 10th bas-relief shows a knight in armor holding the representation of a lion, again, representing the fixed body. After this, of course, next one, there is a, foxcock and 11th aspects of the bull and so forth. But there are also other medallions. This is the one we're looking at here. Also 12 medallions in the lower base. But I think we'll just kind of go through these. You get the idea. So just go through these. This is a good one. Next one. Next one. So these are all alchemical ideas. Next. Next. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Next. This is kind of interesting here, right? This by the way shows a queen kicking over her servant, who's approaching her with a cup in her hand to render service. I don't know what's kind of going on here. I believe that the servant, represents Mercury being kicked down for its transformation. I'm thinking. So in this sense, literally, Mercury is getting its impurities kicked out of it. I don't know, right? So interesting stuff. Next one, next image. Of course, you have it shows an old man bent and stiff with his hand in it looks like a muff, right? This is connects to the reign of Saturn and the chaos. Let's go to the next one. This one has, of course, it's a fragment. It basically has his hands held up in prayer as he steps towards an image in the mirror. But what's interesting is what's in the mirror. He's looking at this image, and take a look. The image is a woman. Perhaps maybe this is nature herself. One sees the whole of nature disclosed as if in the mirror. Maybe, I don't know, but it looks like maybe it's a male. Looks like a female there looking back. Let's go to the next one. The 7th shows an old man crossing the threshold of a mysterious palace. He is tearing down the awning that separates him from the initiated from this mysterious place. I mean, more alchemy, right? Alchemists often talk about reanimating, these giving life to like dead metals, right? So maybe this is what it's connected to. Next one. The 8th medallion shows us the same man again, I guess, representing the Mercury being crowned the king. So the solvent in the body becoming one along with the volatile substance and the fixed metallic salt. Next image. Oh, and of course you have two natures fighting with one another. So back and forth. So you have, anyway, keep on going. So you get the idea. Lots of alchemy going on. Let's go to the next image. Also, by the way, you have the alchemist, the 12th century alchemist or wizard, has a wizard hat. This is actually a Phrygian cap, which is identified as an alchemical initiate. So this is again connected to alchemy. But originally, if you heard my earlier talks, connects to the Phrygians and the mysteries of Kybele, but also the mysteries of Central Anatolia. Let's go to the next image. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got it. You got to. There's a raven there too. There, so this is the alchemist raven, maybe pointing to either the philosopher's stone or whatever it may be. Victor Hugo, by the way, mentions the raven here. Pretty amazing stuff, right? Pretty. I mean, you need evidence here. Let's go to the next few images here. I just want to mention that the zodiac is also, just like we see at Chartres, the zodiac is also on the pillars of the Porch of the Virgin. So you don't see him here because it's far away. So let's look at a closer image. So there's the one. You see them on the right-hand side, on one side, and that's a zodiac. Let's go to the next one. And you see them on the left side. There's the zodiac. So the zodiac, pretty important once again. But I do have to say that remember the Chartres school blends right into the Notre Dame school. So there should be a connection. Oh, by the way, if that's not enough zodiac, let's go to the next image. You got an entire stained glass window depicting the zodiac. Once again, you see the same thing at Chartres. You just can't make this up. Okay, let's move on to the gargoyles. Yeah, all right, gargoyles. So here we go. The gargoyles. These are hybrid creatures with the head of a goat or a bird or some other kind of creature, and the body of a lion or some other kind of creature. But it's a blend. It's a grotesque. It's a blend of two different kinds of creatures. Sometimes they form what's called a strix, which appears bat-like or owl-like. And they're known for consuming human flesh, according to Roman sources. So we have some mythology behind it. Gargoyles are often intended to be apotropaic. So they are intended to ward away evil. Yeah, they are understood as evil themselves. And so they're intended to bring enough fear in people to either take church doctrine more seriously, or else they could potentially fall prey to these viewed demonic creatures. So that was, but gargoyles, um, gargoyles, you can see, you hadn't noticed, incorporates not only Greek and Roman ideas, it also incorporates Celtic ideas. So you're going to see images like this in ancient Gaul. And so it is, and of course, you see these kinds of ideas in the Celtic world at large. Hello, green man, anybody? So this is, in a sense, a continuation of these ancient traditions that are now encased in stone, and they're looking over you in Notre Dame. The gargoyles, in fact, of Notre Dame had a further purpose, for they were added around 1240. And they were to be used as rain spouts, with water falling upon the roof, diverting to channels leading to these sculptures hanging out as far as possible, to make certain water fell far from the walls as possible, so not to have any or incur any water damage. In fact, the term gargoyle comes from the French, which means throat or gullet. And this makes sense considering that water usually comes out of the gargoyle's mouth, right? There is also a French legend from the Rouen area in which a creature called La Gorgelle looked like a dragon with a long neck, but bat-like wings, and the ability to breathe fire. There are other versions of the legend, but essentially Saint Romanus conquers this gargoyle with his crucifix and brings it back to Rouen to be burned, except that its head and neck, having been tempered by its own fire, remains intact, and is then mounted on the walls of the new church to keep away the evil spirits. So you have these legends and stories. They're all kind of fun. Next image. Unfortunately, I like this image too. Many of the gargoyles were removed or destroyed during the 17th and 18th centuries, especially during the French Revolution. They were later replaced in the Gothic style by a French architect by the name of Eugene Emmanuel during his 25 renovation of Notre Dame during the mid-1800s. Now, the next image. Now, the Stirga. Oh, next image. Oh, I like that one. Next image. Often referred to the spitting gargoyle as one of the most famous figures in the cathedral. So basically, he's kind of like sticking out his tongue. So it sits with its head in its hands. It is said to eat human flesh. And so, of course, creatures like this are referred to, for example, Ovid. And now we go to the next image. The spire. Now, the original spire of Notre Dame was completed in the 13th century, but was damaged by wind and weather in general over the centuries. It was removed between 1786 to 1791. And so Eugene Emmanuel was selected in 1844 to restore Notre Dame. In fact, Notre Dame was really damaged during the French Revolution. And so he had hard work to do ahead of him. And he was also set about to restore its iconic spire. He was actually encouraged to repair the cathedral after reading Victor Hugo's work, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is published in 1831. The novel depicts the structure as dilapidated, and the author himself also encouraged him to restore this building. Please restore it. He was only 30 years old at that time. He was not even a Catholic, but in fact, he was not really a Christian either. But he simply believed in the genius of the French nation and admired the beauty of Gothic architecture, and that's good enough. The spire was made out of wood and covered in a protective lead coating. At the spire's base, there have images of the 12 apostles and the 4 evangelists. But unfortunately, next image, it burned. It no longer exists. Next image. And so it is to be replaced, and is being replaced. Next image. Of course, the bells of Notre Dame, of course, the Emmanuel is the oldest of all the bells, dating from the 15th century. This weighs 13 tons and has rung for every major event since the 1400s. So it's very important. So let's go to the next image. We also have, of course, the Virgin of Paris. This statue is located within the cathedral, and it's sculpted in the 14th century. It's very decorative. This Mary holding Jesus, unlike other representations, is depicted in a very natural style. Let's take a look at close-up. It has, next image, it has very realistic facial features. With this said, baby Jesus kind of looks more like an adult. And he has the orb in his hands, representing the idea of savior of the world. Of course, the next image, we have the Pieta by Nicolas Cousteau, a French sculptor from Lyon. He created this beautiful Pieta. He lived between 1658 to 1733. Unfortunately, many of his sculptures were destroyed during the French Revolution, and this one was almost destroyed in 2019. It just missed the collapse of the iron girders, just missed it. Next image. Next image. Oh, this is my blurry picture of Notre Dame, the interior, but you can see it's far brighter than you have a Romanesque cathedral. So let's go to the next image. Here's a better image. Beautiful. This is the interior of Notre Dame, bringing all the light in, and once again fulfilling the ideal of Gothic cathedrals, which are supposed to be illuminated by the continuous light. Next image. Okay, this is interesting. This is the marriage feast of Cana. It is very controversial, of course, because obviously Jesus is at the wedding, and Mary is asking Jesus, can he bring, they ran out of wine. Can you make some more? And he does. But let's take a look at this image a little closer. Next image. Yeah, because that's Mary. So many people claim it's Mary Magdalene. Many people say it's not. So back and forth. It is a controversy, but there you have it. Let's go to the next image. You also have the Last Supper. It's from a 14th century screen. Here we see, next image, a young John laying on the lap of Jesus in complete devotion. Many say this image looks less like a young John and more like a woman. And they'll say possibly this is Mary Magdalene. While it does look like a beard that's there, actually it's not. It's a shadow taken in the picture. Let's go to the next image. But you have such images everywhere where this John lays there, but who knows? We don't know. But this is, again, another story and yet another lecture. Okay. So historical events, we're not going to go over them. I just want to just do an overlook that except for one, we'll just do one and then we'll keep going. But what does Notre Dame look over the centuries Let's take a look-see. This is one of the earlier ones from around 1450. It's very idyllic, except for maybe all the demons in the sky, maybe not so much. Next image. But there it is, one of the earliest colorful pictures of Notre Dame. Let's go to the next image. Of course, this is how it looks like now in the 1500s. Really kind of stands out. But you see there's lots of churches, and you see down below you have the city walls. Next image. Then we move from the 15 into the late 1500s into the 1600s. And once again, Paris is, of course, always built up. The walls have disappeared for the most part. Next image. But people are building homes on the bridges there. Now we're moving into the 16 into the 1700s. It's not, you can see there's no spire there. So that's the way most people remembered, would know Notre Dame for most of the centuries, because the spire was removed pretty early on. Next image. Okay, now we're moving towards the 1700s. Of course, the big public buildings are starting to stand. No more of those houses anymore. Next image. Yeah, and of course, we're getting near to the time of the French Revolution. And what happens, next image, is something very strange. What happened is that Notre Dame was converted into a sanctuary dedicated to the worship of reason, which was a state-sponsored atheistic religion intended to replace Roman Catholicism. So basically what happens, this is during the French Revolution. The cult of reason was basically a whole bunch of ideas and activities and kind of disorderly. The cult encompassed various elements that include anti-clericalism. And of course, the idea of secular authority. But the idea is that the idea is we need to focus upon liberty, nature, and the victory of the revolution. Notre Dame, of course, was immediately a focus, as you would imagine, during the French Revolution. And the Christian altar was dismantled in order to facilitate this new cult of reason, and was replaced by an altar dedicated to liberty, and also with a dedication to philosophy, which is basically was carved over the front doors on November 1793. Because the sculptures of the 28 kings of Israel, Judea on the west facade were mistaken to be French kings, they were quickly beheaded, unfortunately, on the west facade. Notre Dame was established also as a place where you would worship the personification of reason, and that was indeed the goddess Liberty. During the later part of the French Revolution, the cathedral was turned into a food and wine warehouse. At one point, it also facilitated various animals. With the coronation of Napoleon I as Emperor of France, with Pope Pius VII officiating, this occurred within Notre Dame. Bonaparte actually draped fabrics over the Gothic architecture of Notre Dame to make it look more like a Greek temple. But eventually, Notre Dame will be restored. Next image. And of course, a new spire will then be built, as you can see in back there. Next image. Of course, Victor Hugo's, when he published The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Quasimodo, this really did bring attention to this cathedral and made it important once again. And obviously, it became a focal point for various French impressionists and so forth. Next image. And of course, I took this picture looking at Notre Dame as it goes into the night. Okay, let's see me for a few moments. What I do want to say in closing is that, as you can tell, that this cathedral really, talking to us, really did mean a lot to me. It was very important growing up. Notre Dame was always there, like a steadfast friend in stone. And I was very upset in 2019 when this happened, but I'm very relieved that they're able to restore it and that it will be opening up this year. But I also want you to understand that there's more that goes behind so many of the greatest works of architecture that we see in the world today. There's a lot of thought, there's a lot of imagination, and sometimes we miss it. Before, when I was young, I looked at Notre Dame and I just saw this is a beautiful church. It's a nice building. But now, having the knowledge that I have now currently about this beautiful edifice, I think to myself, this is a culmination of a process of so many different ideas that come from the ancient world. So often we see the Middle Ages as a disconnect from the ancient world and that it skips on over into the modern era. So hence it becomes the Middle Ages. And the Gothic style gets its name Gothic because it is looked at when we get to the time of the Enlightenment as something as a backwash, as a backwater, as something that is archaic, it's old, and it doesn't have the nice smooth lines of the classicism that is esteemed to be part of ancient Rome and Greece before it. But the reality is, is that the Gothic cathedrals do represent ancient thought. They do represent, in many ways, the embodiment of Platonic ideas, Neoplatonic ideas. They connect to ancient mysticism, mysticism connected to not only Platonism, not only Gnosticism, but ideas related to concepts that has the of light, the idea that there's this light, this eternal light that arrives, that returns, and it comes back again, and that this light is salvic in essence, that this light is transformative, and that this light needs to be represented in a church because this church is no longer a church. It's an idea. It's an idea of something greater than themselves. It's an idea of a higher order. It's an idea of a heavenly realm that they're trying to capture and bring to earth in this great monumental structure of stone. That's what Notre Dame is about. That is what Saint Denis is about. That is what Chartres is about. That's what many of these cathedrals are about. It's the idea of connecting to light, the light of the world. And of course, their interpretation in many ways it comes from a Christian perspective. However, with that said, at its very base, it still goes earlier into the Greeks and the Romans and their ideas, their Hermetic ideas of light, their Platonic ideas of light, and of course, their Gnostic ideas of what the light represents. And what it does is it transforms us. It takes us from the mundane material world and through its light staircase leads us to the realms above, leads to our transformation. And then there's one more piece I have to add on to this. And that transformation is alchemical. We change, our nature changes from the material to that of the spiritual. And hence, this is why you have all the alchemy everywhere. It's representative of us also changing, not just the base metals, but our own transformation reflected in these great structures. Now, we learned a lot. We've gone a little bit deeper than you expected, but I hope you enjoyed this talk. I did. There's a lot more places I could have gone, but for now, I will close up and tell you have a good night.